It's Don here from the board. Thanks for coming along and checking out this video. So this is hopefully going to be the first of a couple of videos looking at microphones and keyboards. Now part 1 would have already been released, and as you'd see from the title of this video, I'm going to be having a look at the Rode NTR. Now the Rode NTR is a ribbon microphone, and it's the most expensive of all the microphones that I currently have in my collection that I'm planning to use for this video series. And the reason why I thought I'd start with this particular microphone is because it's my mainstay microphone. It's mounted to my desk with a shock mount. You can already see it here in the corner of this video, and it's what I use to record the podcast with and all of my standard videos. So let's have a look at its characteristics again, because that's what we were doing previously, just to go over the frequency graph of what the NTR looks like. And this is the frequency response graph from Rode themselves. Now, I'm not sponsored by Rode, but I love Rode products. I've got a number of Rode microphones in my collection. And hey, Rode, if you somehow come across this and you'd like to support the channel, please get in touch with me. Doubt that's going to happen, but hey, you never know. So the frequency response on this chart is that it shows it's quite a small change, and there's a little bit of a dip into this mid frequency range, and then as we start moving into this high frequency, it starts to fall off. Ribbon microphones traditionally, as I mentioned in part 1, are considered to be very representative of how our ears normally hear sound. They don't add warmth or change tones terribly much, and therefore are considered for that accuracy of sound collection. So that's what we're going to have a look at. And as we talked about in the first video, I'm going to be using Audacity to record, and then I'm going to be having a look at the spectrum. We'll save it, and then we can check it out against the other microphones as well. Currently, the way that I have thought about how we're going to do this is I'm actually going to use Monkey Type. I'd originally thought about using standard text to type over and over and over, but then I thought Monkey Type will give a good range because it's going to move my typing around the alpha block quite considerably in a sort of random pattern or so. I'm going to set it to be in a 1 minute typing block, and I think 1 minute is a reasonable amount of time to collect the sound data that we want to use as the spectrum. Now, I have Audacity already set up below, and you can see that it is monitoring my voice quite well, and that's what is passing through with the microphone right now. And I've also got the desktop camera just to show you that I am actually going to be typing simultaneously. Now, with the height, I'm just going to use my broken bit of ruler here. I'm going to place it against the keyboard, and I want to position the microphone roughly at the same height if possible, and that way we'll have a even kind of placement for the sound levels. Now, of course, it is going to be affected by the mixer and the gain and levels on the mixer, but I will set them to be pretty much the same, and I do have multiple channels, so I don't have to mess around with my normal settings when I use the other microphones. So let's have a quick look and see how it goes. I'm going to turn the microphone down into that placement position. I'm going to start recording Audacity, and I'm going to give about 10 seconds for background noise, and then we can remove that background noise when we do the processing, and we'll have a look at what the spectrum looks like for my daily driver at home. So this board is a Philco Magistouch 2 with stock Cherry MX Blue switches in it. I do have a custom spacebar there, but the key set is the Mix eDrug keycap set, which will stay the same through all the microphones and therefore be a baseline keyboard. So let's see what it looks like, what it sounds like. Do apologize if the microphone picks up a lot of wacky noises as I'm adjusting it and positioning it. Okay, so just gonna tighten that back up a bit. So we can see it's doing about 82 words per minute. Accuracy 93 wasn't very good. I guess there is a bit of, shall we say, performance anxiety happening there, which is not really surprising. Typing on recording can be quite stressful for some people. I'm pretty happy with 82. That's about right for me. I type between 80 to 90 normally. A bit of a dip starting off there with some blips, as you can see in the graph. So let's switch down to the actual Audacity bit of it, and we'll do the processing that I was talking about. Now, it was about 2 seconds, so we'll cut it from about 2.5 to 12.5 or 10 seconds. We'll take the noise reduction, get the noise profile. We will noise reduce that just to clear out that background that I was talking about that we kind of expect, and then we're going to just amplify it. Now, amplification doesn't actually change the pattern. It just stretches it to balance it out to the peak amplitude of 0, and it does it quite evenly. So I have no issues with amplification, simply because the percentage of frequencies against their decibels, the ratio will stay exactly the same. And I'll do this with all of the microphones so that it'll be nice and even. So we'll do that just to stretch that out, and you can see those peaks and troughs. Now, we're going to also cut it from the 12.5 second back, because it's not representative of the actual keyboard typing, and we'll zip forward to the end where the typing finished, and that was about a minute. We'll cut it at the 1 minute mark, although it's about a minute and 1 from when I actually started typing. We'll cut that end off as well. And so now we've got this 1 minute sample. We're going to go to the plot spectrum to check it out. Only 54.6 seconds. Okay, that's cool. That's cool. We'll take that. And one thing that I was told about was that when I was reading through this is that you need to make sure that when you do this, you plot it in a log graph, because otherwise it doesn't really look very well. So we'll plug it into the log graph. There we go. I'm going to leave the default settings for everything else, and let's just stretch that out. So maybe we'll, I think that's still quite visible, isn't it? A good representation of the stretch. So we can see that there's a lot of things happening in this lower range of frequencies, and then it starts to tail off on the top end, 2000, 3000, 4000 hertz, and there's nothing really above about 4500 hertz. So that's what this looks like on the Rode NTR. Do we have any other data right now to compare it against? No, not at all. But I think this is probably a good starting point, and we will save this data. Well, the spectrum will be there anyway, because I'll save the track. We'll keep that aside. We'll go and repeat this with every microphone. You can listen back to it because it was recording both in OBS as well as Audacity simultaneously. But you do need to note that YouTube's audio processing itself will potentially affect the way that it sounds. But that said, YouTube will process it exactly the same for every microphone that I use. And with that in mind, with using OBS the same, with the keyboard being the same, the settings on the mixer hopefully the same, it should give you an audible difference when you listen to it as I'm doing each of these videos. So that's our first graph. Rode NTR. It's quite, I suppose, I would call it relatively evenish. I mean, we're talking a peak of about minus 33 decibels. It drops to about 48 for most part-ish. Gets off to about, about 51, minus 51, before it really falls off on the high frequencies. So this keyboard doesn't have a lot of really high frequency sounds. It's quite lower and bassy, which, the way it sounds, I think that's quite accurate. It's not a metal case. There's not really any pings going on. My daughter is jumping up and down over on the side trying to get into the video, and she's just escaped hopping. That's what I was like, what are you doing? So we'll save that. We'll cap it. And then later on, when I get all of them done, we'll come back to them and lay them up side by side and check it all out. So there you go. That is the first microphone. We'll see how the rest go. And if you like this kind of stuff, of course, please make sure you hit that bell button so you know when the next video in this series comes out. And if you like this kind of stuff and you want other people to check it out, please hit that like button and that share button as well. So thanks for checking out the video. And of course, as usual, until next time, happy clacking.